Original Appearance Manufacturing was founded in Ames, Iowa, and our flagship product is Quick Covers, a brand of slip-on rocker panels that make rusty trucks look as good as the day they drove off the lot. This is the story of how we went from an idea to a prototype to a full-fledged business. We'll give you a peek behind the scenes and share the ups and downs of starting a manufacturing business from scratch, right here in the US. We are OAM, and you're watching Made in the States. So one of the problems that hit us unexpectedly this year was the global supply chain crisis. So that really kind of came to our attention in March of this year. Specifically in our industry, plastic was sort of the raw material that really we were having trouble with. And our main supplier of plastic told me that it was the worst price increases and lack of availability that he had seen in 30 years in the industry. So that was kind of surprising. The reasons that they gave were, some of them were COVID related due to the sort of congestion at the ports from everyone trying to catch up after COVID from the year prior. But a big part of it, at least in our industry, was the Texas freeze.
This morning, Arctic air.
Millions are still without power this morning.
Amarillo, Texas getting pummeled with snow overnight.
That combined with a surge in demand really caused a supply strain. And so we saw our prices going up, double digits every month. I guess, made the executive decision that we were just going to buy a bunch of plastic, way more than we normally do, to sort of get ahead of the problem. Now, at the time, we were told things should normalize, sometime later in the year. I was told July. I was told maybe a little bit later than that by our suppliers. But I figured if that's what they're telling everyone and everyone's ordering enough inventory to get through to July, there'll be another surge in demand then. So I figured I'd order more than that. So we ended up getting, I think, depending on the type of material, somewhere between 9 and 12 to 13 months worth of raw material in stock. Obviously, we don't have piles of cash sitting around, so we ended up getting a short-term working capital loan in order to cover those costs. And we were able to get the amount of plastic that we wanted, which was good, but unfortunately we don't have the space for that either. So that caused us to have to rent a third warehouse space, try to get that set up, and then figuring out the shipping to get everything here was kind of a nightmare because these are bigger sheets than we're used to getting. So the pallets are big, a little bit harder to move, and it was, I think by the time it was all said and done, 20 or 30 pallets of plastic that had to be unloaded. And we don't have any loading bays at any of our facilities, so we actually had to hire a company to transfer the entire load out of a closed semi onto an open flatbed so we could get access to it with our forklift and then unload it at our warehouse. So we were able to get the plastic in. We mentioned before that we kind of have to try to keep a low humidity environment just to make sure that the plastic is in good shape when we go to form it. So we had to set up a dehumidifier and a bunch of fans in this new warehouse because it wasn't air conditioned. Got that working after a few hiccups. The brand new dehumidifier we got broke after 2 days, but luckily they replaced it. And so we were kind of rolling pretty good. And then things seemed to kind of start to get a little bit better. I wasn't hearing as much about supply chain issues, and I thought, man, maybe I overdid it. Maybe I bought too much. The working capital loan that we got was really expensive. They were basically taking a percentage of our daily sales. So we were spending, anywhere from 3 sometimes to 4 times the price that we would normally pay when we were buying our raw material sort of 1 to 2 months at a time. We ended up getting in touch with our local banker who did a good job of helping us sort of restructure that debt, pay off the original one. We got a new one with a much better payback period that's helped us out a lot. Because we had to buy plastic from suppliers that we don't normally work with, they actually could only sell it to us in like large sheets. So we had to build this table contraption and try to hook it up to a table saw. And now we're actually having to rip down every single sheet before we can run it. So that's just another, added labor and input cost of just processing the raw material before we can even use it. So it's definitely been a challenge for the business in a lot of ways, both in terms of, space and money, but also just the added labor time now of having to drive to a second warehouse, cut down the plastic, palletize it, bring it back. But that's what you do, I guess, when you want to stay in business and keep parts being made. So it looks like, at least from the info we have right now, that we made the right call by ordering that really large amount and just getting it when we knew we could. It's been a stressful, crummy time, and I just kind of feel like culture has and just overall morale is kind of down. So we had always done like weekly employee lunches before. We had kind of let that go during COVID just for safety reasons and to cut some costs, but we've thought about bringing that back just so we can kind of at least get everyone in one building again, sort of have some of that camaraderie and just have a little bit of a benefit to try to get through the crap that we're going through. So trying to do that a little more often again, just to kind of increase morale and get everyone together.
What's on the menu?
So we got mac and cheese, pulled pork, a bunch of stuff, brownies, and that's my salad.
Looks good.
You're young. Okay, she twitched a little bit. You can do it. Oh.
I like your hair. How do you get her down? I don't know yet.
Oh, we're going. So, fun times at OAM today. We're always fighting some sort of fire. And so, today, or I guess yesterday, our AC kind of crapped out, but in the weirdest way. But basically, the AC will run, the A coil ices up, and then we're not getting any more cooling, essentially, in the plant. It's like 90-some degrees right now, and it's going to get up to like 100 degrees. And we run a thermal former in here that gets up to, I don't know, like when I run the plastic out on the program, it's like 325 degrees for some of those parts. It's like 2 weeks until we get the part, so unless we want to press the button on the air conditioner itself all the time, cycling it on and off manually, I tried to think of some way we could do something, so I've tried to educate myself on, I think if I use a timer, I got a timer over here that cycles on and off. It's got a few dip switches so I can set the duration of on-off time. So I don't know, I'll start out with 10 minutes, but I think if I tag off the thermostat for the cooling sensor, and then that runs through the timer, it'll basically cut that cooling cycle on and off. So, you know, the thermostat is still the ultimate override, but on the cooling side, we should be able to mechanically cycle it. It's a really proficient wiring diagram. Luckily for us, this is a super simple unit. What are we doing here? There we go. So an air conditioning system runs on 24 volt AC, which is super strange to me, I guess. I do all 24 volt DC control stuff. So technically this yellow should be the cooling cycle. It sounds like it's running the fan and the compressor outside. What my 5-minute Google search taught me. Looks like that's working. I'm sure every HVAC guy is just cringing right now. So anyway, I think what I'm gonna do is, hopefully I got enough leads to these things. I'm gonna go and cut the breaker and pull this apart and get in there and try and wedge a timer in there. Who knows, it might be hanging out the side of the panel before this is all done, but we just really don't have a choice at the moment. So I think this is probably the compressor AC, very loosely labeled here. So we're just gonna flip these off, and I'll try and probe it and see if it runs again. Hopefully not. It should do nothing, and it's doing nothing. So we are good and off. We can pull everything apart without electrocuting ourselves or frying the very expensive AC. Might have broke it a little, it's fine. If I'm really lucky, the electrician was super lazy and left me a big roll of wire in there, but I'm doing electrical myself, I highly doubt it. Yay, not a lot of wire. We don't have any wire nuts or any way to connect these wires other than something really awful, so unfortunately for me, oh boy, I remember that I have some under the hood of my truck on. Ooh, these are a little crispy. So bad. That should work. unplug this right into your seat here. Oh, that's good. Step around the timer. It's fine. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to go through the knockout here and literally have some exposed wires and mount this thing beside the electrical panel. It's going to be a good time. Oh no, little guy. Safety last. Science. Alright. Think there's anything electrical behind this wall? I hope not. I'm gonna find out. I could have used a shorter screw maybe. Might give you a little key hanger on the other side. Oh. Let me get one that actually has threads so we can hold on to our drywall. Oh, we've already made a nice hole. Literally visualizing a scene from Trailer Park Boys where what's called like 10-minute job tries to do some home improvement project and ends up like cutting an electrical line and a water line, and all he's trying to do is hang a towel rack. So let's hope that doesn't become my reality here. This is the part where I put it on and I rip it right off the wall. Oh, this is so bad. It's gonna have wires all over it. Okay, so about 10 minutes and a bunch of ghetto wiring later, the moment I've all been waiting for. Should I just leave it for when Zach comes back, just hanging out of the panel like that? I'm super tempted. This is totally up to electrical code. Uh-oh.
What's that noise?
Cycling the... Interesting. Okay, I guess we gotta do a little more poking around. So it's probably every time it tries to pull the relay in. So we like select something where it's not trying to pull it in. And now we're back at our 26 volt AC, or 24 volt it's supposed to be. Alright, so I really don't know why, but for whatever reason the amp capacity from the transformer coming from the control board really doesn't like this R function, but this RB function still does the same thing. You can hear it flipping on and off back and forth, and if we actually probe it on the multimeter, I got it just on a 6-second cycle time for setup here. So we're at 24, it's on. That would be the compressor, now it's off. But it's still running the fan, as you can hear. And so it'd come back on. So this way we're mechanically cycling our compressor and our AC on and off, even though we're still on cool and the thermostat's still locked in. Now when the thermostat does drop below the temp that it needs to be, that's that yellow signal wire going to the cooling system, it should kill the whole timer off. And that's on 3. So in theory, every 30 minutes this will cycle, and so it'll cut the compressor off, and then the A coil can de-ice itself, and it should cycle back and forth. In theory, no problem, if you try and not look at all the rest of pretty much everything that just happened. But I don't know. Is it wrong if it works? Yeah, that's wrong. Don't do this at home. Don't do this ever. Anything I do, don't copy. It's all very questionable. Okay, so now our timer's clicked in. So it sounds like our compressor and everything kicked on. I'm gonna slide by here really quick. Ooh, it's nice and cold. So that's working correctly. Let's shut the garage doors because it's like 1,000,000 degrees in here already. Back to having an air-conditioned plant. Theory, we'll see. So far, so good.